In the damp, foggy air of 19th century England, a boy's future seemed as fragile as his health. His name was Cecil Rhodes. Consumed by persistent cough, huddled by the fire, his world was confined to the four walls of his family home. But in his mind, he wasn't just a sickly vicar's son. He was an heir to an empire. While other boys dreamed of games and youthful adventures, Cecil's eyes were fixed on the maps that adorned the walls, maps glowing with the vast, pink-hued territories of the British Empire. He saw a world waiting to be claimed, a legacy waiting to be forged. Born weak, Cecil Rhodes dreamed not of mere survival, but of conquest. His ambition burned brighter than any fever, a fierce, unyielding desire to leave his mark not just on England, but on the entire world. This was not the story of a boy overcoming illness. It was the story of an ambition that would reshape continents. At the tender age of 17, with lungs still weak but a will as strong as iron, Rhodes was sent away from the cold English climate. He boarded a steamship, leaving behind the familiar gray skies for a new horizon. His destination, Africa. He wasn't just seeking healthier air, he was chasing a rumor, a whisper of fabulous wealth that had traveled across the oceans. As the ship cut through the Atlantic, the cold mists of England gave way to the blistering sun of a new world. He arrived in a land of stark, breathtaking contrasts, a continent of blazing deserts, soaring mountains, and untamed rivers. It was a land of chaos and opportunity, a place where fortunes could be made and lost in the blink of an eye. For a young man with a mind like Rhodes, Africa wasn't just a refuge for his health, it was a blank canvas. He set sail for a land of riches and ruin. He journeyed inland to a place that would become the epicenter of his world, Kimberley. The Diamond Fields were a scene of frenzied, desperate energy. Thousands of men, baked by the relentless African sun, toiled in a chaotic pit of red earth. They were digging for stones, for a flicker of hope in the dirt. The air was thick with dust and the sounds of pickaxes striking rock. Fortunes were made and lost daily. Among this legion of prospectors, Rhodes was different. He arrived not with a pickaxe, but with a plan. While others saw only the immediate glitter of a single gem, he looked at the sprawling, chaotic mine and saw something far more valuable. He saw a system waiting to be controlled, a river of wealth waiting to be dammed. Rhodes saw what others missed, not stones, but power. In the chaotic frenzy of the Kimberley mines, Rhodes began his ascent. He didn't just dig, he schemed, he planned, he bought. With money borrowed from the Rothschilds, he started purchasing smaller claims, one by one. His rivals, exhausted by the punishing labor and volatile market, saw him as a relentless force. He was charming when he needed to be, ruthless when he had to be. He moved like a chess master across the board, consolidating his holdings, outmaneuvering his competitors with shrewd negotiations and a seemingly endless supply of capital. Soon, individual miners were replaced by a single, colossal entity. Through sheer cunning and capital, he forged a diamond monopoly. De Beers consolidated mines. With this, he controlled 90% of the world's diamond production. One man's will had captured one empire's worth of wealth. With a fortune secured that was larger than some nations' treasuries, Cecil Rhodes turned his gaze from commerce to politics. Diamonds were merely the means to a much grander end. He moved to Cape Town, the heart of British power in southern Africa, and entered the world of the Cape Colony's parliament. Dressed in his now iconic crisp white suit, he was an imposing figure. His speeches were not just political rhetoric. They were declarations of a personal destiny intertwined with that of the British Empire. He argued for expansion, for infrastructure, and for a vision of a united, British-controlled Africa. The wealth from his diamond mines flowed directly into his political ambitions, funding his campaigns and winning him allies. Money became influence. Influence became destiny. His voice, once weakened by illness, now echoed in the halls of power, shaping the future of a continent. Rhodes's ambition was not limited to the Cape Colony. It was continental, even global. In his study, surrounded by maps, he would trace a line with his finger, a line that would become his life's obsession. It stretched from the southern tip of Africa all the way to its northernmost coast, from Cape Town to Cairo. This wasn't just a trade route, it was a vision of an unbroken chain of British territory, a red line of imperial control painted across the heart of Africa. He dreamed of a single, contiguous empire, connected by a railway he would build, populated by British settlers and ruled by Englishmen forever. This Cape to Cairo dream was the ultimate expression of his imperialist ideology, a belief that the British were a master race destined to bring civilization and order to the world, whether the world wanted it or not. Or, to make his grand vision a reality, Rhodes knew that money and political influence alone were not enough. He needed a dedicated, loyal brotherhood committed to his cause. Behind the public pronouncements and parliamentary debates, he worked in the shadows. He established secret societies, modeled after the Jesuits and Freemasons, with the explicit goal of advancing the British Empire. His last will and testament was not a personal document but a political manifesto, outlining a plan to form a secret league of men who would work to bring the entire uncivilized world under British rule. Astonishingly, his ambition even stretched across the Atlantic. He plotted, in his own words, for the ultimate recovery of the United States of America as an integral part of the British Empire. This was not just colonialism. It was a quest for total global dominion. Armed with a royal charter from the British government, a private army, and the inexhaustible funds of his commercial empire, Rhodes set his sights northward. He sent his agents to negotiate treaties with local leaders like King Lobengula of the Ndebele people. These treaties, often misrepresented and misunderstood, granted Rhodes vast mineral and land rights. His British South Africa Company pushed into the territories north of the Limpopo River, raising the Union Jack over lands that had been inhabited for centuries by the Shona and Ndebele peoples. British settlers followed, establishing farms and towns. In a breathtaking act of personal arrogance and imperial power, he didn't just claim these lands for Britain. He bought and redrew them, and then named a vast new country after himself, Rhodesia. His name was now etched onto the map of Africa. But the land Rhodes claimed was not empty, and its people did not submit quietly. As the British South Africa Company's flag was raised, so too was the spirit of resistance. The Ndebele and Shona people, realizing they had been deceived and were being dispossessed of their ancestral lands, rose up. What followed was a series of brutal conflicts. Armed with spears and old rifles against the British Maxim guns, African warriors fought with incredible courage to defend their homes and their freedom. The cost of Rhodes' Imperial Dream was paid in blood. Villages were burned, cattle were confiscated, and thousands of lives were lost. His empire grew, built on a foundation of diamond wealth, but so did the cost. In the smoke-filled battlefields of Rhodesia, a terrible trade was made. Freedom was exchanged for diamonds. As the 19th century drew to a close, Cecil Rhodes stood at the zenith of his power. He was the Prime Minister of the Cape Colony, the master of the world's diamonds, and the ruler of a country bearing his name. In his own mind, and in the minds of many in Britain, he was a hero, a titan of industry and empire. Under the flickering candlelight in his Cape Town home, he would stare at his maps, at the ever-expanding red stain of British territory spreading across Africa. He saw himself as a civilizing force, bringing progress, order, and Christianity to a dark continent. He believed he was an agent of destiny, fulfilling a divine purpose. He believed he was building civilization. In truth, he was buying history, rewriting the destiny of millions with a checkbook and a gun. His legacy was being forged, but the final judgment was yet to come. He didn't conquer Africa. He bought it, piece by piece, soul by soul. With every treaty signed and every claim staked, the red lines of the British Empire bled deeper into the continent's heartland. Rhodes saw Africa not as a mosaic of peoples and cultures, but as a vast, untapped treasury, a personal project to be painted in the colors of his ambition. His vision was simple and absolute: to extend British rule from Cape Town to Cairo, a railway of steel and dominance cutting through ancient lands. He wasn't just drawing lines on a map, he was redrawing destinies, asserting a new reality built on contracts backed by firepower and a belief in his own manifest destiny. The land itself, rich with promise, was being carved up, its future decided in boardrooms thousands of miles away, its worth measured in carats and ounces. For the people who called this land home, the tightening grip of his empire wasn't an abstract concept. It was a daily reality of dispossession and control. Behind every glistening diamond lay a grave. Behind every elegantly worded treaty, a thinly veiled threat. The human cost of Rhodes' grand vision was staggering, a debt paid in sweat, blood, and tears. We see the faces of farmers, their connection to ancestral lands severed as they were pushed aside for corporate interests. We witness the haunting images of workers in the mines, their bodies broken by grueling labor for meager wages, their lungs filled with dust as they extracted the earth's treasures for a distant crown. Mothers mourned sons lost not just to the dangers of the mines, but to a system that valued resources over human lives. Entire communities were uprooted, their social fabric torn apart. The wealth that flowed out of Africa was built on a foundation of immense suffering, a brutal equation where one man's profit was multiplied by a million moments of despair. This wasn't just industrial progress, it was industrial-scale exploitation, and the echoes of that pain would reverberate for generations. In the end, even the man who seemed to own everything couldn't escape his own mortality. Picture an aged and ailing Cecil Rhodes, a titan weakened not by his enemies, but by his own body. He sits surrounded by the artifacts of his ambition, maps sprawling across tables, detailing the empire he willed into existence. As thunder cracks outside, it feels as if nature itself is passing judgment. Did he feel regret? Did he look at the vast territories bearing his name and see the ghosts of his actions? Or did he only see an incomplete project, a dream not fully realized? The empire he built was too vast to hold, its foundations too soaked in injustice. It was a structure built on the perilous ground of greed and racial superiority, and such structures are destined to crack. The world he had so forcefully shaped was already beginning to shift beneath his feet. The empire was too cruel to forgive, and its architect was becoming a prisoner of his own monumental legacy. A king in a room full of maps, haunted by the continents he could no longer control. His borders became battle lines. The arbitrary lines Rhodes drew on his maps, cutting through tribes, separating families and lumping rival groups together, did not create nations. They created cages. After his death, these artificial boundaries became the fault lines of future conflicts. The seeds of division he sowed grew into the bitter harvests of civil war, ethnic strife, and political instability that would plague the continent for a century. His system of racial hierarchy and economic control laid the groundwork for policies like Apartheid in South Africa, a brutal and formalized system of segregation and oppression. But oppression always breeds resistance. From the townships of Soweto to the halls of newly independent parliaments, a powerful cry for freedom rose up. People fought to reclaim their identities, their land, and their futures. The legacy of division was met with a legacy of defiance, as independence movements surged across Africa, determined to dismantle the world that Rhodes had built. Today, Cecil Rhodes is long gone, but his shadow still stretches across the continent. It lingers in the persistent inequalities, in the economic structures that continue to favor extraction, and in the political borders that still define modern Africa. Yet, to see only his shadow is to miss the vibrant, resilient, and dynamic continent that has grown in spite of it. We see bustling, modern cities, centers of innovation and culture. We see children in schools, learning histories that now include the critique of their colonizers. We see markets where diamonds are still traded, but where Africans are increasingly demanding a fair share of their own wealth. Cecil Rhodes was a man who tried to own a continent, a man who tried to buy forever. He failed. Forever belongs not to the conquerors or the capitalists, but to the people. Their story, a story of survival, creativity, and hope, is the one that truly endures. Thank you for watching. If this story resonated with you, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more deep dives into history's most complex figures.